an issue. I just would say that when we proceed with statistics, if I go to that in my situation and I say, this is happening, I better be doggone sure that what I'm saying is actually occurring. Does that make sense? And really, that's where statistics comes into play. And we could show that based off this. Now, as we go through this part behind me, I've lost my pen. I have no idea. I got too excited. Anybody know where that's at? Did I put it down somewhere? Oh, it's right here. Thank you, Charles. Okay. What is the alpha level of this? Here's what we've talked about. What has been the percent that shows statistical significance? 5%. We actually call that our alpha level. You'll see it say something like this. It'd be like alpha equals 0.05. And a lot of times we say if our p-value is less than that, it is statistically significant. If it's greater than that, then it's not statistically significant. Okay? So we're going to talk about alpha level, and we're going to talk about the importance of this and how it's important to be proven. Okay? All right, the first few things we're just going to walk through together. It's a pretty quick part one of the lesson. Although I took longer because of the story, but that's cool.
Wait, did people come and visit your this other stat class?
They did not, no.
They only came to like 4th.
Third and fourth, I think. Okay, so as we look at number one, after all of this situation, we're going to just read the scenario, okay? If we have 180 employees that could be laid off, all 180 could be laid off, and we were needing to lay off 10 different people, okay? 10 different people. And in this, the manager posts the list of the 10 employees that are supposed to be laid off. 5 employees are women, and 5 are men, okay? One of the women comes in and says, you know what, I'm claiming a gender discrimination lawsuit, okay? I'm saying that this right here is gender discrimination. As we look into this, the manager then responds on number one, okay? This is the scenario. How could there be gender discrimination when half of the employees were male and half of them were female? Here's a question. What additional information do we need to know? I saw Fiona see it first.
We need to know how much of the population of 180 is female and how much is male.
Good. We need to know the proportion of male and female, right? So we need to know the different amounts of males versus females. It's really the total in the totals in the company, okay? Now, this is not the situation, but let's just make it really, really drastic. Out of the 180, what if I told you 175 were male and 5 were female? Then there's oh man, go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, then there's like clear discrimination because 100% of the women would be laid off.
100%. Oh yeah, I would say that. Yeah, we're gonna go in that lawsuit. Okay. I'm gonna tell you this though. Okay. In this situation, 120 were males, and 80. Or I'm sorry, math teacher. 60 were female. Okay. All right. Based off of that, just real quick, do we have reason to believe?
We have reason to look into
Since
it.
it's a majority.
I like that.
Investigate.
I like that. We have. Go ahead, Grace.
I was just saying like the same thing because it's not equal in the population too, but there's equal in 5 and 5. So it's not kind of unfair.
Yeah, I agree. Because if this was just by chance, like I would question this a little bit. Okay, question just a little bit. At least look into it. Okay. Now here's a quick thing. Number 2, how could you and then the next thing we're gonna actually simulate this here. How could we actually go and investigate whether there is a gender discrimination claim? Can you detail just a process of how we could look at that, Eric?
Probably labeling them from like 001 to 180, and then like using an SRS and using like either your calculator or TMD.
Good. So if I did it this way, I could do like with my calculator or my random, like how we did yesterday, random digit table. Okay, that's good. We could do either of those two. Does anyone have maybe an easier way that we could do it there? What's the proportion here? Maybe that will help us, Claudia.
It's 4 to 2, or wait, 2 to 1. So
2 to 1, yeah. So what proportion are male?
let's see, 2/3.
2/3, yeah. 2/3. You said 2/3. Good, Ryan. And then I had one for you, Claudia. Good. And then therefore, what proportion is female?
It's 1/3.
1/3. Good. Can you come up with a method of how we could maybe do it that wouldn't be as many numbers as 001 to 180? Maybe something that would be a little bit more maybe simple that represents this proportion?
Oh, yeah.
Grace?
0 to 6. The rest up to 9.
Yeah, I like it. Is there something that we could do that maybe we did yesterday that maybe could help with that? Other than a calculator or random the spinner, right? But there's 10 of them there.
I don't know that.
What one would we ignore? We could ignore one, right?
Like
Zero.
If it was 0, we just skip it and then we do it again, right? So we would say that for our spinner from 1 to 3, that would represent a female, and a male would be
The rest.
the rest of them, right? Other than
Other than 0.
0. Yeah, exactly. Good. We could do it that way. Do you have another way we could do it?
Using a dice.
Oh, I like that. So we could use a dice over here, right?
And 1 through 4.
Okay? And by the way, when you do this, understand like, hey, when you describe this on an FRQ, because it'll happen, know how to describe it, right? So from 1 to 6, that's our possibilities. What would be a male? 1 through 4, good. When I roll it each time. And what would be a female? 5 through 6, good. Okay? So if I did this, I say I rolled the dice how many times? Do I roll it? 10 times, good. So we roll it 10 times, where n would be equal 10. Good. And what would I record?
What you get
No,
each
no.
time.
You can take any more?
What you get each time, so how many females and how many males you end up with.
Good. And that's how we would record it, right? Okay? So let's do this. Let's simulate the scenario to see what our p-value truly is. Kind of like how y'all called me a liar yesterday. Okay? By the way, this is kind of humorous. Yesterday, this was y'all's right here. Y'all called me a liar with my p-value of 0. Guess what the other p-value of the class was? That was very
Also 0.
Dramatic,
Right.
yes. right here. I'll stick it on me. Right here.
Oh, come on.
Right here. 20. It's 20%. 0.2. This is really not good. All right, here we go. I'll just hold it as it sticks together. This is very, very bad. Yeah, struggle bus. All right, so right here, this was 0.20. So this was actually not statistically significant. So who's a liar now?
That
Maybe-
one over
maybe
there
they're
is
doing
very
it
wrong.
Coach
Oh,
Jay,
their data wasn't right.
let's have a field trip one day.
Pretty
to
sure
the
we have
basketball
more
court.
students in our class than we do, so
Yeah,
our
prove
it.
samples are
Their
more
data's
accurate.
being spread out.
It's funny you say that because I think I'm going to do that next week.
What'd you say?
I'm still looking into it.
Very good.
Not,
To do
not me,
what?
but y'all.
I'm gonna say.
So here's the thing. Here's what we're going to look at. What is the p-value of possibilities of getting at least half or anything less than half? I'm sorry, half of females or anything greater than half purely by chance. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. Back on the back table, I have dice, I have spinners. I want you to do just kind of like how we did yesterday. And I want you to record the dots on the left side over by Rita, okay? So let me just kind of dictate this again. We're going to simulate 10 people being laid off, okay? We're going to see, based upon what Eric helped us with and a couple others of you helped us with, in terms of 1 through 4 would be a male and 5 and 6 would be a female. You're going to do it 10 times and record the proportion of females that we have, proportion of females, and I want you to do that 3 times. So you'll put 3 dots up on the board. Again, feel free to do a calculator, but I do want you to at least do a dice or spinner at least once. Okay? Can y'all do that? So 3 dots up on the board. I want a lot more than yesterday. That way we can really show. Okay?
I roll dice.
And break. Let's do it. Here, you doing okay?
Bro, I'm like black.
You can do a calculator if you want.
Or I don't know, you can choose.
How much money you want?
Thank you very much.
I only roll 6.
Wait, how many times are we doing this?
You'll do it 10 times. So you'll do basically the same scenario, right?
What I say? Come on, come on. Come on, come on. That's one sample size. That's one female already. Here you go. Sample size. Just
Jay, do you want to hand me
Come on,
that?
what's it?
Say again.
Oh, you said you were 100%. That was 100%. That was but that's another thing, so it doesn't even matter. Female?
Oh my goodness.
That's discrimination.
Good word, Charles. What would I do? You don't want no lawsuit. I'm right. I don't know, right? That's female. You do 8 and 9 or 4.
Yeah, exactly. And then 0, you would ignore.
I did 1 to 3.
You just want to make sure that you have the same proportions for each.
Wait, Coach Jay,
Yes.
how many times do I complete the simulation?
You'll do it 10 times
Oh my gosh, you're right.
because that would be. I think that each one is a different employee.
So we get,
Does that make
so
sense?
we get 10 numbers sometimes, or we just get 10 numbers.
Because like I rolled the dice 10 times and got 0.4. Do I do that 10 times?
Oh no, so that you'll do 3 dots. So that would be 1 dot. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. It's like one sample. Okay.
That right there was 1 sample of size 10.
So you want 10 samples of size 10.
You want 3
3
samples
samples
from
of
you.
size 10.
Okay.
Does that go?
Wait, he said
I mean, but if
I
you had
was
listened to the
confused.
directions the first time, we probably would have known. I mean, probably because you guys both sit over there and talk to each other about how smart you are and don't pay attention to Coach Jay.
Who got a not all 103? So clearly I'm struggling.
Hey, bro.
Because you sit over there and talk to Eric.
No, you guys.
We probably should stop this video.
Yeah, we're gonna stop this. We're gonna stop this. Otherwise, we'll have to do. I don't know. Something else.
Okay, this is not right. I got 4 also. Okay.
I'm gonna get
Wait, how is this? It's 1
Uh-oh.
through 5. Is male and then I'm waiting for another. No, no, no.
Oh, got it.
9 and then 1 through 6.
We're supposed to be calculating the proportion of females.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. I love like court cases and stuff like that. By the way, while you're doing this, if you're looking for a good show, Broadchurch, it's a good one. Good show.
I've been watching the
That's
first
nice.
one.
Blacklist is good.
I'm on season 5. And I started like at the beginning of the year.
I can't put my thing on the board.
That's a good show. It's a good show.
Whenever you rented your stuff.
5 0 lower
Oh,
upper.
it's 6.
So let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. So you want me to do? There we go.
Is there anyone confused on what we're doing here?
CJ. You gonna roll dice this time? Yeah, I need to roll dice. There you go.
What did you get, Sean?
0.5.
0.5? Oh, John.
It's looking.
You get 0?
It's looking
And
All were male?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty
I got 3 and 4 every time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
So crazy. Wow.
Grace is salty today. I want everyone to know that.
She is salty.
She's salty today.
I'm always salty. Wait for the dinner. I just have to get used to it.
I'll say that to my wife. I'm like, you're salty.
Once you're drinking, after 9 mil.
Minus 7, 8.
Bro, it's
And
off
every
forward.
proportion of female, both are 10.
No, like I'm.
Hey, while you're doing this, let's do this just so we're moving. Make sure you have 3 dots up there. I'm gonna come back to 4, 5, and 6. Cool. While you're finishing, let's do the golden nugget, and then I'll come back to 4, 5, and 6. All right.
I really did. Oh.
So mu or p is equal to the null value. You see that?
Yeah.
And this is the H or O.
Okay.
And this is HA, the alternative. Down here,
Is null spelled with a U or a O?
a U. Good question. Is greater than, less than, or not equal to? Can you read that? Are y'all good with that? These are the three possibilities for the alternative, okay? We kind of already said that yesterday. Just want to make sure you have it. All right, the p-value, just the interpretation is all we need. And again, we'll come back to 4, 5, and 6 here in a second.
How many are you supposed to do?
Can y'all read this?
Yes.
All right, again, just as you're finishing up, I know that there's a couple dots still going up there, but the p-value is the probability of getting the results or more extreme, purely by chance, okay? If the null is true. You can interpret that a couple different ways, but I would say the probability of getting the results or more purely by chance, assuming the null is true, okay? And then this is the big one. This is the conclusion. Kind of like how on the conclusion, remember the state plan do conclude, interpreting a confidence interval, like what that actually means. This is the same thing that we're going to be going into within the next couple of days, okay? So this last one, like star this one, this is like the golden nugget of the golden nugget. Net. Okay, all right. We do or do not, depending upon what we get as our p-value, have convincing evidence against the null hypothesis. The alpha level is what we call our significance level. I'll just put alpha down here. Significance level. Traditionally, it's what? 0.05, but you're going to know that we're going to actually change that a little bit around. We'll talk over that later on, okay? If the p-value is less than the alpha level, what do we call that? Say that again here.
Alternative?
Well, yeah, I think you're onto it. So that means we would reject the
New hypothesis.
reject the HO, the null, right? I almost said it. Never mind. We'll reject the null, and we would accept the alternative, right? Accept the alternative. So the p-value is less than the alpha level. We would say that it's actually statistically significant, okay? Now I'll tell you this, today's lesson, this is very, very important. Like again, from now on through the rest of the year, I keep telling you, like this stuff is what, it's not going away. The conclusions, the p-value, very, very important in knowing how to interpret that, okay? All right, how do y'all feel off that part right there? Y'all feel okay? All right, let's do this. Let's go over 4, 5, and 6, and let's talk through this, okay? All right, number 4, what percentage of the dots represent a percentage of 50% or greater? Well, let's talk through that. What does 50% or greater represent over here?
0.5.
Okay, 0.5 and 0.6 that we have. But in context, what does that mean? Charles, do you know what that refers to? Based on the scenario. How about this? What does each dot represent?
laid off.
Perfect. You said that awesome. So over here, what does 0.5 and 0.6 represent? The proportion of females that were, the amount of samples that were laid off that had 50% of females or 60% of females, right? You already said that in the dot. That's why I kept going. So good job on that. So really, where is the line? Yeah, over 0.5. Good, Iman. I heard you. It's good. Okay. So 0.5 or anything greater than 0.5 is actually called my what? What do we call over here? Your p-value. Good. This is my p-value. Okay? All right. Do I need to go over that again? Ish. Okay? So what are we trying to say? Was it gender discrimination, right? That's really what we're looking for. As we look at this over here, this is purely by chance, right? Purely by chance. Where 120 were male and 60 were female, okay? So we simulated this. Out of 10 people, there were 50% of females or more. What percentage of the time? Well, we have to find all the dots, right? So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 33, 36. So there are a total of 36 samples, right? Each of size what? 10. What do we call this distribution? Sampling distribution. Sample of a sample, right? Well, technically, is it, Claudia?
No, there's not all possible samples.
Yeah, you're getting somewhere with that. But we're going to use the simulation with this to be able to go for it, okay? Good work. So when we look at this, what percentage of values are 50% or greater?
0.22.
How'd you get that?
8 out of 36.
Good, so there's 8 over 36, which is 0.22. I think it's exact, actually. Okay? Which would make what over here? 0.78. Okay? Now, why is the p-value over here and not over here? Say again, Rita? Yeah, so it's over 0.5 because if I got 0.3, right? 0.3, that shows that is gender discrimination in a lot of ways, right? Right? Because that doesn't equal the 0.5 that's there. But is 0.22 low enough to say definitively that we have convincing evidence that there was gender discrimination going on? No. Does that mean there wasn't gender discrimination going on? No. Do y'all understand what I'm saying on that? Right? I'm not saying that there wasn't. We just don't have convincing evidence with this to have a case against the company. Okay? Now, we could probably do more samples and test it, see if that p-value changes, but our p-value was 0.22, and therefore we do not have convincing evidence to say definitively that it actually was gender discrimination. Okay? All right? That's why with this, sometimes those court cases can be kind of sticky. Because if we don't have convincing evidence, I mean, it's tough unless we have stuff where, obviously people said we have it recorded or whatever. Okay? So there's obviously other things too. But that's a statistical evidence that supports it there. So we would say, what percentage? 0.22. So this is my p-value is equal to 0.22. It is greater than my alpha level, which was what? 0.05. All right, so let's interpret this thing, okay? All right, let's interpret the p-value. Can anyone just kind of go after that p-value interpretation real quick? I have some tickets, by the way. Some of you did some good stuff there. Interpreting the p-value that is there. Someone on my left. I know, y'all are like, this was for earlier. Y'all had it. Any thoughts on my left?
I was on the left for a second there.
This is true. Alana, let's go.
Okay, because the p-value of 0.22 is less than 5%, we don't have convincing evidence that there was gender discrimination against the females.
I like that. Let's do this. I think you went straight to number 6, which is perfect. Okay? Which is
Sorry.
perfect. Let's do this. Let's go to just the p-value interpretation. So I would say down below, say that again because we'll put this on number 6. Number 6 says, because the p-value is 0.22 and is greater than our alpha, which is equal to 0.05, okay? So I would just start with that. Because the p-value is 0.22 and is greater than our alpha level of 0.05, we what?
Do not have convincing.
Yes, we do not have convincing evidence. Convincing, how do you spell convincing? Oh, there we are. Evidence that there was gender discrimination in the company. Okay? In the company or something along those lines. Okay? So you say, Coach, how do I interpret this? Here's how you remember it. Okay? I would remember it this way. Compare the p-value to the alpha level. Do you understand what I'm saying with that right now? If you don't, hey, tell me right now. Compare your p-value, 0.22, with your alpha level of 0.05 right now. After comparing it, then state, if it's less than, we do have convincing evidence, and if it's greater than, we do not have convincing evidence. Am I making sense on that? Okay? If you're good, say, uh-huh. If you're not good, please tell me. All right.
Because the p-value, that's just like what percentage in context.
The context is more the gender discrimination in the company down below. Up above, before I say whether it's convincing or not convincing, usually Hannah and I just say, because the p-value, which is 0.22, is greater than our alpha level of 0.05, we do not have convincing evidence, because it's greater than, that, and then context. Okay? So is this statistically significant? No, it is not. Okay? All right, are y'all connecting the dots? Connecting the dots? Read. The 0.05? Yeah, I kind of did with, because it's greater than our alpha of 0.05, the 5%.
So that's enough. You don't have to like stay with
No, this is good. This is good. I'm perfect with this. Okay? Good question. All right, p-value. Harry, did you have the interpretation on the p-value? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah.
You know how you interpret the p-value?
The percentage of the percentage of the women who are laid off, which is more than 50%.
Nice. 50% or more, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tweak that just a little bit, though I like what you said. Again, this is our last thing before we kind of move forward. The probability of getting the results or more purely by chance. And I want to do something. I want to do something here. I want to start from the top. Like I like to rephrase this. I would say at the beginning, assuming there is not gender discrimination, because again, you're innocent till proven guilty. That's important. Discrimination. Assuming there is not gender discrimination, the probability of getting the results or more purely by chance would be what? 0.22. Y'all, does that make sense? Okay. So, and by the way, this up here, there's not gender discrimination. This is the HO. Okay. All right, that's the null hypothesis. So, assuming there is not gender discrimination, that's the null hypothesis. And there we go. Based on this information, can we reject the HO? No. We cannot, right? Because it's greater than 0.05. Good stuff. All right, last thing, last question, and then we're going to pause. We're going to have a little character development and have a little breather, okay? Last question is this. Is 5% too high for an alpha level? Let's just have a conversation. If I'm talking about gender discrimination or whatever discrimination that's going on, and I want to be really sure on something, and maybe that's a bad example. Maybe we're talking in terms of the delta example, right? A p-value, the change in the p-value. Would we want to decrease? Is there ever a situation where we want to decrease that alpha level, and why?
You want to be very confident in your results. Then you want like like a very small percentage to be statistically significant.
I like that. I like that. Does anyone else have other thoughts like what Eric was saying? When would we want to decrease my alpha level? Maybe that's a better. Claudia, you have something?
Maybe like when you have a smaller population, because
Okay.
then when you have a smaller population, 5% means a lot more than if you got like it's all women or whatever, all men, you know?
I like that. That's good. That's really good. If I'm doing a court case, I'm a lawyer, right? And I'm trying to defend someone. In that example, would I want to have 5% or would I want that to be like maybe lower?
You want it to be lower.
Why?
Because then you have more chance of proving that, like, your case to be correct or like probable.
That's good. Grace, did you have something? You said yes to.
It's just like harder to get within that percentage if it's much lower.
Yeah, good. Remember my free throw thing? It was 0%, right? And you all said that's really statistically significant, right? Why is that important? Because the p-value was so small that in order to say we have convincing evidence, if I went from 0.05 to 0.01 and it is still statistically significant, that means that I'm sure that I'm sure, or I'm more sure. Am I making sense on that?
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk more about this later, but it's just a good conversation I wanted to make sure we had there, okay? All right, so real quick, I wanted you to, I'm going to come to this in a second. Can we do the character development first and then take a breather? Is that cool? So I saw this interview by Tom Brady, and I thought it was really, really, it was impactful. It's kind of off of the Ikigai thing we were talking about, but it's kind of, we don't have a specific category today. This is more just a conversation kind of extending from it, especially from the Super Bowl and that sort of thing. So this interview was conducted with Tom Brady, and I think you'll be surprised at some of the stuff. What I have?
That's an ad.
Oh, this right here?
I thought you listened to that song, man.
Y'all must not use Spotify because you know your song does not show up right there.
I thought y'all were. I was like, I have nothing to hide. I don't know what I'm.
Sure.
I got peaceful piano.
Party mix.
Where's that?
David, get up.
Clean party mix.
mix.
Yeah, because
Usher.
we do. We have in our house. We have a. This is funny. We have a disco light in our
Can I
house.
see?
So when we literally will have parties.
Bring it over.
We'll get parties in our house. So
Can I
it's me
see-
and my daughter.
see
We
the
just
playlist?
party.
Can I see the playlist?
This is it.
Oh.
This is my daughter's jam right there.
That's my jam too. That's so my jam.
You cannot smile after that song. Anyway, sorry. Y'all are putting me on a tangent right now. Okay. All right, let's check this out. This is Tom Brady. Let's have a conversation from it. Cool? All right, let's see it. I'm going to put this up.
Tom Brady.
Can you go out to restaurants? If I have the energy to deal with, putting a happy face on, sometimes I don't feel like that.
Now, you seem a bit the reluctant star.
Well, the problem is you can't have one without the other. You can't have the football fame and not the other stuff. So, in a lot of ways, I've created this myself.
It's what you always wanted.
You're right. It has. And I didn't think it came with all the other baggage, though.
The most eligible bachelor in America.
Well, it's very flattering. But at the same time, I don't think I sleep any better at night. Being that. No way.
You mean like alone or not alone? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's right.
But with all that money, fame, and career accomplishments, we were surprised to hear this from him.
Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey, man, this is what it is. I reached my goal, my dream, my life is... Me, I think, God, it's got to be more than this.
What's the answer?
I wish I knew. I love playing football and I love being the quarterback for this team. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of other parts about me that I'm trying to find.
to me, man, I saw that interview. That was a few years back. That was after his 3rd Super Bowl ring. And I'm going to do this. I want to talk through that real quick. Does that surprise you? It doesn't surprise you? All right, talk to me about what do you? I'm not even going to introduce what I think we're going to go into here. Give me your feelings on that. Positive, negative. You were surprised, not surprised. You know.
I wasn't surprised. I think like a lot of my friends have gone into sports. I hear this a lot. Like that's great that they've reached this goal, but they feel like there's something more. And they feel like they have to do something more with their life than just commit to a college. And like I don't know. I think there's always a deeper meaning in life other than just like your physical attributes and abilities.
It's good. I like that. You got something, Grace?
It's probably because like they've wanted that so long, and then when they finally reach it, they're like, "What do I do next?
Huh.
Like, what is this doing for me now? Like, is there more of this?"
It's good. It's really good. Other thoughts? Rita?
I think it's like the journey that like matters more. That so like kind of like what Grace was saying, they went through all of that, and so like now they're just like they have it. They went through the journey. They met the goal.
Yeah.
And I think they're like ready for their next journey.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good thought there. Any other ideas or thoughts when you hear that?
I mean, all the stuff that like he was talking about is like tangible stuff, so like Super Bowl rings and like whatever, like it's happened, but he was saying like there has to be more for him, like whether that's relationships or like, you know, like things that actually matter, and none of the stuff that actually matters is tangible or like physical things that you can get.
It's good. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, like honestly, it didn't really sound like. I mean, he was talking about like physical things, but like it sounds like he was looking for something more than physical at that time.
Yeah.
He felt like everything. Basically, he's living the American dream, but his life wasn't like complete anything like that.
Yeah. You know? This is
I think
good.
it was interesting how he brought up the fact that he's like the most wanted bachelor in the U.S.
Yeah.
And he kind of like shook it off because, in a way, the guy was hinting at it because of his Super Bowl rings, but he doesn't want to be the most wanted bachelor in the world for his accomplishments in sports. He wants to be it because of his heart, because of his mind, and who he is.
It's a good thought.
He's still looking for that.
Good thought. Anything else? Is there anyone surprised by what he said? Is it no? Isn't it crazy? I find that the people that I want to be most, I'm not saying I want to be Tom Brady, okay? But the people that I want to be most sometimes are the most empty people in the world. It's kind of crazy, right? The people that I think, man, they got it made. A lot of times are the most, they struggle the most. It's kind of crazy. They got everything. Jesus said it this way. He said that you could gain the whole world and lose your soul, he says. So is it possible to have everything and yet still have nothing? It's kind of crazy. I think there is. I think that's possible. So I saw this drawing. Curious, okay? I want you to think in your own heart. I want you to imagine that was that was a good transition, and then my marker didn't work. You know, I hate that.
It's empty.
I know. It's empty. That deserves a ticket. Remind me. I've got a ticket for you. Okay?
What?
And that marker sucks too. All right. God, you want me to talk about this? All right, we'll see. All right, I want you to think about this is a person, okay? And as we look at this person, here we are. Yeah, we'll do this. We'll go this way. And there's his hands. There he is, okay? Coach J, 6 foot. All right, here we go. As we look at this specific one, okay? I gotta give myself the hair. There we go. All right. So as I look at it, there's two different things that we could that motivate us. Okay. There's two things. One is an axe. You say, well, that's pretty gory. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you about it. Okay. And then one, for me, just because this is what we pursue, is the winds. Okay, the success. Yours could be money. It's a basketball in his hand, okay? And then a W, which represent wins, okay? So we have two different things that motivate. Success and fear. Okay? Success and fear. So the axe is, man, once you do something, oh man, hey, you know what? There's something coming. Okay? It's going to be chopped down. Fear of losing what you have. Okay? Fear, whatever that fear may be. And then the other thing that motivates is our success. My question is what motivates you more? If I were to ask you, like in your heart of hearts, are you motivated more by fear or are you motivated more by success? Getting that next thing, getting that next Super Bowl ring, getting more money, getting whatever. What motivates you? Cool? All right, you have it in your head. What motivates you? It's a question. It's in your head. You don't have to answer it because I want it to be inside of you.
Like between the two of us.
Yes. So I would say this. Would you are you more focused on the fear of failure, or are you focused more on getting to that one thing, being recognized, success, whatever that may mean? Okay? All right, you good? Here's the thing, and I hope this drawing sticks with you because it's stuck with me for about a couple years now. It has stuck with me. I'll be very real with you. I'm curious. What do you think I am? Actually over here. It's actually over there. It's actually fear of failure. Okay? Both are equally bad. Actually, both are equally bad. Because it's got to be deeper than that. Your purpose has to go way deeper than that. It actually goes into the third phase, which is your heart. And it all has to do with what is your purpose? What is your purpose? Why did God create you? Because of my faith, I believe everything stems from a relationship with Jesus Christ. I believe that Tom Brady is really referring to a spiritual issue. That's just me. In my worldview, he's referring to not a physical thing, it's a spiritual thing. And he's empty because he's pursuing, whether it's whatever side he's with, right? The reality is that his true purpose and identity is not met. And really this comes after pursuing a relationship with Christ. What is my true purpose? Why am I here on this earth? And really, after that, you're not motivated by fear or success, but you're motivated by doing what you do because you know why you do it. You know why you do what you do. Whether it's drama, I do a production. I don't do it because of my success or feel fear of failure. I do it because I know why I do what I do. Cool? Am I making sense on that? So answering the why. Why do I wake up in the morning? It's a big, big deal. It relates to the Ikigai purpose and principle, but understanding that it's not about the success, it's not about fear or failure, but it's about why I do what I do. It's about your purpose. It's about your purpose. Thoughts there? Yeah, awkward. It's just something to think about. I want you to think about it as you're, again, it's bigger than stats, it's bigger than, I would say it's even bigger than high school, is understanding your identity. Why do you exist? Answering that question, why do I wake up in the morning? It's a big, big part of why you do what you do. Kind of intriguing. Really intriguing. All right, here's what I want you to do. I'm thinking we're going to change up our schedule a little bit. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to just throw this at you. I felt like with the confidence intervals, we rushed things a little bit. I thought it was really, really quick. So I'm going to throw something at you. The next test is supposed to be next Friday, okay? Next Friday. I'm thinking about making it because we'll then have winter break. You know what I'm saying? I was thinking about over winter break having the test be pushed to the following Tuesday. Okay? You follow me on that? All right? Either way, it's not ideal. You understand that? It's not the most perfect scenario. But just in looking at the schedule, that's what I'm thinking about. Talk to me now, because it's got to be one of the two. I can't push it off to the next Friday. You know what I'm saying? We just don't have time for that. Talk to me about that. What do you think, Fiona?
I don't know, I think it'd be kind of tough for people going on mission trips because they'd have that whole week where they're stuck in a third world country without, what I'm saying, and then,
Sure.
I don't know.
I'm hearing you out. Would it be better then to do it the Friday before we go on winter break?
The only thing about that is I think a lot of people leave Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I leave on
Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay.
So people would be missing.
Okay, I'm hearing that out. Claudia?
I was just saying, like, we had a test after, I think, like, Thanksgiving break or something. And I remember that was, like, hard to remember everything
Sure.
right afterwards. So, I don't know. It seems like Friday would be best. And then, like, the people who are missing, they can make it up on Tuesday. Like, it's not ideal, but they wouldn't want to take it on, like, Wednesday either. So.
Yeah. No, it's good. No peer pressure here. How many of you say, yeah, let's do it Friday? How many of you say, no, let's wait till the Tuesday afterwards? Okay. Oh, man, that's tough. That's tough. Oh, man. I'm going to go with the majority, and we're going to do this coming Monday. Okay, I'm joking. I'm not Here's what I'm thinking, okay? Here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to keep the test on Friday. However, if you're missing for a mission trip, if there's a lot going on, I'll communicate with me. Is that cool? And if it's something where we have to push it off till Tuesday and we have to figure that out, we'll navigate that together. Is that fair? So we'll keep it Friday, but just know, I will be honest, the next couple days we got to move at a little bit of a clip. Okay, got to move a little quicker. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. We're gonna go. Right now we have 22 minutes left. We're gonna go to the next section. Okay. I will be honest. This next section, there's not a lot of material at all. The material can be tricky. Okay. So let me say that again. There's not very much today. However, it can be kind of tricky. Okay. I'll also be real with you and say sometimes this can be a little bit tricky to teach. So I'm going to make sure I go slow, and I'm going to ask that you just throw questions at me. Hey, Coach, I'm confused on this, and that way we can go through this together, okay? All right, do this for me. I want you to get down this chart right here, okay? Just get it down. If you want to put in the golden nugget on the second sheet, that would be a good idea, and that way you've got it, okay? I'm going to actually get it over, actually I can write over here. I'll write over here. Okay. And really, I want you to think of it in terms of this. The truth over on the top, this is the true thing, and this is the conclusion that we came up with, okay? So this was from us, and the top one is more reality, what really exists, okay? Now, real quick, as you're writing that down, let's go back to the activity when we talked about this idea of free throws, Coach J's free throws, right? What was our null hypothesis, or the HO? Good. My proportion, true proportion was 0.9, right? So we're going to write that down. Our P is 0.9. But y'all said, because y'all are salty, you all can't shoot 90%, that my alternative hypothesis was what? Yeah, that was my P hat, but that wasn't my alternative hypothesis, right? So a couple of things. P hat was 0.78, right? That was from my sample. But remember, our alternative and null hypothesis is our true P. So P can either be not equal to, greater than, or less than. What did y'all say? Less than 0.9, right? Y'all were really salty yesterday. Very good. And what did we get for our P value? 0.0 for y'all, right? And because of that, we rejected the what?
HO.
The HO, yes. We rejected the null hypothesis and accepted the alternative, right? Y'all remember this?
Yeah.
All right, but I hate to break it to y'all. Y'all rejected me, okay? But in reality, I am a 90% free throw shooter. Let's just say that I am, okay? So because of that, what happened is over here, y'all rejected the null. This was you, that you rejected it. But what was reality? The null is true. We call that a type 1 error. Okay? So I'll say that again. What you find is you're not always 100% confident, right? Things can happen. Even if you get a 0 as a p-value, you can't always be 100% sure. So you said that you rejected the null hypothesis of me getting 0.9, right? But in reality, I come back and say, well, we have, going back into it, we found, or whatever, that in reality, I really was a 90% free throw shooter. That's called a type 1 error. Okay? All right, how do y'all feel on that? Okay? Good. really this chart is this next section. So that's why I'm just kind of going through the scenario. Let's say that you said, okay, we'll reject the null, and the alternative was true. So we rejected it. This was in reality true. We have a what? Correct conclusion. Meaning I am actually less than a 90% free throw shooter. Okay? If you're good, say uh-huh. Okay, make sure you're with me. Are you with me? Just make sure you're, because this is a little weird. Okay? The next thing is this. The conclusion that the other class made was this one, right? And they found out what? Yeah, so this one over here, I'll do a different color so you see. We failed to reject the null, right? Because the p-value is greater than our 0.05. So since we failed to reject the null, let's pretend that, in fact, I was a 90% free throw shooter. That's a correct conclusion, right? I'm correct. I actually failed to reject it, and this was actually true. Therefore, it's a correct conclusion. But if I failed to reject the null, and the alternative was true, so I failed to reject this, but the alternative was true, we call that a type 2 error, okay? A type 2 error. All right, questions on that?
Can you re-explain that again?
The blue one?
Yeah.
So what they said in context was, we can't reject what we said that you were a liar. We thought you were. We don't have reason to believe because our p-value was 0.2. We don't have reason to believe that you were not a 90% free throw shooter. Kind of like the gender discrimination that we looked at over here. It could have happened. You may not be, but we don't have convincing evidence. So we failed to reject the null up here, right? But guess what? In reality, this was true, that I'm actually less than a 90% free throw shooter. So the fact that I failed to reject this was actually an error. I should have rejected it. That's a type 2 error. Cool? The gender discrimination one, it would be as if in the case, we failed to reject it, just like we just did. But in reality, we go back in and we find that actually there was gender discrimination. That's a type 2 error, right? What's a consequence of that for the gender discrimination? Ooh, they get away with something when in reality what? There should have been some sort of gender discrimination that went on, right? What's a consequence for the yellow? So let's say we did reject it. We said, you know what, there is gender discrimination when in reality there wasn't. What is a consequence of that?
False accusation. It's like it's not fact. It's not real.
Yeah, it's not real. They say, hey, you did gender discrimination. In reality, it didn't, right? Which is worse.
They're both just
Yeah, they're both like.
I agree. Sometimes when you do this, though, there's going to be one where you're like, if I was going to go one side or the other, I would probably lean towards this error. Does that make sense? And you'll see that as we go through, okay? Cool, Grace?
How do you like fail to reject one though? Like, how is that possible? Like why is that possible?
Yeah, good question. We actually failed to reject over here, right? So when we say the p-value is greater than our alpha level, which was 0.05, because it was 0.22, we do not have, remember what we said, we do not have convincing evidence to say that there was gender discrimination that went on because of our p-value. What we did right there, I haven't used this term, we failed to reject this because our p-value was greater than 0.05, right? So we don't have reason to believe, we don't have convincing evidence, so we failed to reject this. So if we failed to reject this, we actually, we don't have a way to accept the alternative. Am I making sense on that? Cool. Claudia? These are great questions.
So when you don't have convincing evidence, you fail to reject.
Bingo.
No. Okay.
But if it was less than, you either reject or fail to reject, right? So if I reject, that means that, okay, for the Turner thing that you're going to do, you're going to show the 2 seasons, right? And when you show the 2 seasons, if the p-value, when you solve it, we'll go into that later, if that p-value is less than 0.05, then we have reason to believe, we have convincing evidence that in fact the attendance did decrease from last season to this season. Got me? We have reason to believe there. But if the p-value was 0.22, it's greater than 0.05, we do not have convincing evidence to say that from last year to this year, that attendance actually decreased in the amount of viewers watched.
So then you fail to reject.
Then we failed to reject. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's a great question. All right. I know that's not the most exciting thing. Does that help a little bit? All right, so with that being said, I wanted to give you that piece before we went to the next activity. So do this, go to this next one, and we're going to go as far as we possibly can, okay? Here's what I'd like for you to do. We're going to read the scenario. This is actually a real scenario that was pulled here, which is quite interesting. Obviously not the names, okay? A Wolverine Worldwide, a shoe company in Norcross, improperly disposed of chemicals which have leaked into the ground water.
What?
Okay?
Whoa.
We have a different
PFAS. By the way, PFAS,
Is this true or not?
completely true.
This is sounding like
Because you put Rockford on here.
What did I put?
Rockford.
Oh, it shouldn't say Rockford because I changed it around. But it was a real scenario that was utilized and used, okay? All right? I changed it up to Norcross because we're in Norcross, right? But this actually happened in Michigan. It's actually happened in Michigan, and it's actually spreading. By the way, just side note, PFAS is like it's a plastic that is getting into our water that some, if you go into it, you can research it, but basically it makes people really, really sick and can kill people because like you're drinking plastic. Just side note. So that's what like PFAS is. The state's drinking water limit of 70 parts per trillion is considered safe, while anything above 70 is considered dangerous. Officials believe the water in Norcross may be unsafe. They take a random sample of 200 households and they find the average lead level of the sample 70.5. All right, let's talk through just real quick. What's my X bar? My sample mean? 70.5, right? What is my true mu? 70, right? Based off this, you should know the Nolan alternative hypothesis, okay? All right, so here's what I want you and your group to do. I want you and your group to start on number 1, and I want you to go as far as you can to number 8. As you go through that, I'm going to come around and check. So when you do number 1, I'm going to say, yeah, Grace, Emily, y'all are good. That looks good, and go on to the next one, okay? So I want to make sure I check each group's as you go, because you have all the resources to answer them, but I want to make sure that you are correct, okay? All right, ready? Break, let's do it. And I'll come around as you're going through it, okay?
I want to hear your Clean Party playlist.
You want it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Again, I'll check as you go. I go around there. You may, yes, ma'am. All right, we've got 10 minutes. I want you to go as far as you can on this, okay? Yes, ma'am. For the Nolan alternative?
Yes.
Are we struggling on the Nolan alternative?
Okay, well, okay.
So, by the way, the Nolan alternative, we both have mean, right?
Yes.
By the way, on the actual, and you'll see this kind of as we go through, what is mean? Okay, so real quick,
The truth.
just describe it to me, not like a number, describe what mu is.
It's like the true.
The actual average of the population.
True mean of the population of what?
The level of water.
Yeah, lead in water or PFAS in water. However you want to describe that there. That's good. And so what is the mu? By the way, mu is always, the null. The null is always mu or p is equal to whatever a value is. That's always just equal. Always equal. So what are we saying that equals is? 70. Good. But what do they officials in Norcross believe? More than 70, right? Does that make sense? And that's how we put the null and then the alternative. Okay? You'll have more practice on that on the homework too.
Also, beneath that, like anything that above that 70 is safe.
Yeah, we're saying that true mu is greater than 70. So my question is this statistically significant that this sample shows that we can reject the fact that it's 70 and it's actually greater than 70. That's the context. Okay? You okay? Does that make sense on number 1? Cool.
So you don't actually use 70.5. You just say that it's more than. Like, what do I do with 7.5?
This is what we'll use later.
When we would graph it, that's where we would draw the line of it's significant.
Bingo. We're going to use this later on, like when we do the state plan do conclude.
Oh, okay.
Basically saying, is this number, the sample, does that show statistical significance? Do we or do we not have convincing evidence? Okay? Here's what's cool about it. That seems weird, but you already kind of did it with confidence interval.
Yeah.
Except you found an interval by using a sample to predict the population, right? Or to put an interval of what the population is. It's going to be kind of the same thing, except the only difference is we use this to show, can I reject the null or do I fail to reject the null?
So this unit we have the number for the population. That's what 70 is. This scenario, that's the number for the population.
Yes, except this is what the state is saying, 70. But the fact that they're saying that in this town, that it's greater than what the state level is. Does that make sense? We don't know this to be fact. We're saying, is this true? Can we show that? If we can show this, that means we've got some PFAS in our water, and we're gonna have to really fix some things. Does that make sense there?
Yeah, I could just do it.
Cool. How about this? As I have you kind of go from 1 to 2 and so on, I'll kind of go through or kind of help as we go through, okay? Together? Hannah, how are we doing on that?
I'm just confused.
On number 1?
Yeah.
Are you confused on 1?
Yeah.
Do you know what the mu is?
No, I get that information, I get that. I just think how would you rank the appropriate hypothesis?
Yeah, that's a good question. So remember the true mu or the true p is what we're referring to when we're talking about the proportion or mean, right? True proportion or true mean. So when we write that down here, you would say mu or p is equal to blank.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be like a sentence, it's just that.
Literally, it's this every time.
Okay.
I define what the true mu was or the true p. That's like our parameter that's there. I'm good with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Jared?
What if we found out that the level was like 60? What would that be?
Like 60 for the sample.
PPT.
So if my PPT was
Because
60,
it's not equal to 70 and it's not greater than 70.
are you saying that would be my sample mean?
Yeah, like say you got that number, yeah.
Well, again, we'll work with that later on. This would then be x bar is equal to 60, right? Does that make sense? But for right now, we're just saying our true mu is 70 because this is the state level.
Yeah.
We're saying that in our town, we have PFAS in our water, we're saying.
Yeah.
So mu is actually greater than, it's actually going to be greater than 70, which obviously provides a lot of complications, right? So we're looking and seeing, does my sample say that it's statistically significant? Does that make sense? Cool. Grace, and then I'll get to Ryan.
So if something is statistically significant, would you follow my rule? Or no be the
Then if it's statistically significant, we reject the no.
Oh, okay.
Got me? And then we accept the alternative that mu is greater than 70. Am I making sense on this?
Yes.
Hannah, first off, is part 1 okay? Does that feel a little better?
Yeah.
All right, let's look at part 2 together, because I think we just need a little help. After conducting the SIG test, we found the p-value to be 0.045. Now, I'm giving it to you. Interpret a p-value. Could someone just, what would be the interpretation, Ryan?
Is it assuming the PFAS level is safe at 70 ppt?
Yep.
There is a 0.0045. No, 0.045.
0.45?
Probability
Yep.
of getting a PFAS level. Is it less than? Or
There's a
greater
0.045 probability of,
getting a PFAS level? Is it
of getting a, make sure I got the context here.
Greater than?
Yeah, of getting a sample mean, because this is what it's pulling from right here. Of getting a sample mean,
70.5 or higher.
there you are, of 70.5 or higher. Ryan and Jared, good work. You just that last part, right?
Wait, isn't that the same thing? The PFAS level is the same. The average level.
So we're talking two things, right? Assuming PFAS is safe at 70, that's the true mean, right? We assume, because you're innocent till proven guilty, assuming that is true, there is a 0.045 probability of getting our sample or greater or higher, because it's greater than, right?
Yeah.
And really, you could say purely by chance at the end if you want to say that, okay?
We're supposed to talk about the alpha value.
Yeah, I thought this was like
If that's the second.
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is interpreting our p-value, right? Now, go to number 3. That is talking about my alpha level, right? So that's talking about, is this statistically significant? So there's two things, right? I want to make sure everyone's clear. P-value is the probability that this occurred purely by chance, right? Meaning my sample purely by chance. If this is less than 5%, then we go down to 3 and say that it is statistically significant. Got me? All right, so let's do this. Based on this p-value, what would we say?
Because the p-value is 0.045 and is less than alpha equals 0.005.
Good. I heard Ryan. Could someone else say it too? Because I like what Ryan said.
there is convincing evidence that we should switch to bottled water.
I like it. I like that. So let's say, actually, okay, so because the p-value is 0.045 and is less than what?
Alpha equals
0.05 alpha level, okay? All right, someone on my left say, just tell me. All I said was related the p-value to my alpha level, right? What do we say now? Go ahead, Grace.
Should assume that the water is not safe, then we should switch to bottled.
I like that. I would say, just to keep it formulaic a little bit, we do have,
Statistical evidence.
good, and I say convincing,
Oh, yeah.
but you're right. I would give you credit on that. Convincing evidence that the mu, the true mean of the population of PFAS in water, or I would just say the mu, if I defined it already, is less than 70. Cool? And that's how we would go after it, okay? Alright, here's the thing. If you struggled on this, I want you to do me a favor. If you could, before Friday, go home and start on part of the homework, it really goes over these 3 parts right here, okay? And we'll hit that again. We'll go over it again come Friday, okay? We'll kind of hit a couple more examples. All right, have a great day, y'all. We'll see y'all. Hannah, what do you think? Is it okay? I just know we were talking there. Grace and I think Ryan and Claudia, I think I have one for y'all because y'all had said something at the end there.
Okay. Yeah, same.
Really? For this?
Yes.
I mean, it's okay. Like, I understand it to the point where I can explain it, but I don't really know what's going on.
I just need.
I don't know the
just need to
purpose.
finish this, making up this test.
Yeah, I'm not really on. My mind's not really on trying
My
to
mind's
like,
on this,
learn it to the best
my
of my
mind's still not on it. Like,
You know what I'm saying, Christian? Like, I need
Yeah.
to get over chapter 8 before I like can truly focus on chapter 9. You know.
Question: did this make sense?
That
I don't know what
that
it
makes
is.
sense.
Yeah,
I think it
that
was
makes
just the fact that we went out of order when we first did it. That I thought that was when we started talking about convincing evidence. You know, like we went to 6 instead of 5.
Oh yeah.
That
So
so that's why I thought it went in that order.
gotcha. So this is an So what is a p-value? Maybe that's a good thing to answer there.
Go ahead, Eric. You got that one.
Yeah,
Eric.
Null is what is stated. So if I say the mean of the last test for all AP Stats students in the world is 75, right? And you say, Coach, no, I think it's greater than 75. We just set the null and alternative. The null is mu is equal to 75. The alternative is that mu is greater than 75, right? The question is do we have convincing evidence to reject the null hypothesis, right? that it was equal to 75 and that it was actually greater than 75. We could do that by running a test. We haven't gotten there yet. But if we get a p-value that is less than 0.05, we have convincing evidence to say that we reject the null. If it's greater than 0.05, we do not have convincing evidence, and we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was, in a nutshell, literally what we talked about today. Cool?
Yeah, that helps.
I would, if you're confused, check out the homework, because there's a couple of things on there that goes through it, and it might be good practice there, okay?
Okay,
Cool.
so p-value, it's the probability that
See y'all.
the alternative happens purely by chance.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. I just want to make sure that the null and the alternative were a bit confusing in the first question.
Yeah, it is a little weird. We're saying that the state's drinking water is not 70, right? PPT.
Not 70. Okay.
That's safe. We're saying that at Norcross or wherever we're at, that it's greater than 70, right?
Oh, because it's unsafe. Yeah.
Unsafe.
All right.
This is the null and the alternative.
Oh, okay. All right.
Does that make sense there?
That makes sense.
That's the big part of it. The p-value is the probability that, like with the gender discrimination, the probability that the proportion of employees are 0.5 or greater purely by chance, right? So if that